So in this video, we're going to be doing solving absolute value equations. So an absolute value, absolute values look like this. Okay, so whenever we have an absolute value, it is going to be talking about the distance from zero. Okay, so if we're always talking about distance, it's always going to be positive. So my answer should always be positive because we're talking about the distance between zero. So if I do, let's say, the absolute value of 1, well, if I have 0 and I have 1, the distance between here and here should be 1. Well, let's try -2. If we're talking about the distance between -2 and 0, it is +2. Okay, so my answer should always come to be positive if we're talking about numbers. So we're also going to be talking about solving different equations that have to do with this. So we're going to be talking about distances from both sides of 0. So if I were to solve this, since we're going to have to include it being the distance 5 away here, we're going to 2x minus 1 equals +5 and 2x minus 1 equals -5. And you guys will see why once we get through it, why we make one end positive and one end the opposite of what it is, so negative. So we're going to go ahead and solve these. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides, so I have 2x equals 6, divide by 2, so x equals 3. Let's go ahead and do the other one. Add 1 to both sides, so 2x equals -4, divide by 2, so x equals -2. So I have x equals -2 and x equals 3. So now I need to check my answers to make sure they work. So I'm going to erase all this so that I can check. So I'm going to check one at a time. I'm not putting them both in at once. Okay, so I'm going to take out the x, and we're going to try -2 first. So 2 times -2, I got -4. -4 minus 1 is -5. Okay, but whenever we take the absolute value of a number, it becomes positive because we're talking about distances. 5 equals 5. Now let's try 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 minus 1 is 5. Absolute value of a positive number is still positive. So 5 equals 5. This is why you have to test both the positive and negative side of it, because we have two different answers that are going to work when we talk about absolute values in these situations. Okay, so first off we need to get this by itself so we can do the absolute value. So we got to get rid of the things not attached to it first, so I'm going to add 1. Oops. And then I need to get rid of this 3. Right now it's being multiplied, so to get rid of it, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So now I have x plus 2, absolute value equals 3. Now I can split it. So I can do my +3 and my -3. That is your last step once you get rid of everything on both sides of it, is to split it with the positive equal sign and the negative equal sign. So for this one we're going to subtract 2, so x equals 1. Subtract 2, so x equals -5. And then we need to check our answer to make sure both of them work, because at some point both of them will not work. So we go back to the original equation. Let's try 1 first. And we're just going to simplify the one side to make it easy. So if we simplify inside my absolute value, you can kind of treat it like parentheses. So we're doing that first. Okay, the absolute value of 3 is just +3. It's still being multiplied by that 3 out there. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. So that one checks out okay. Now let's try the other one. So we got -5. So again, treat it like parentheses, do the inside of it first. -5 plus 2 is -3. Let's take the absolute value, because I can't multiply it until I take the absolute value, so it's going to make it positive. 3 times 3 is 9. And now we can subtract that 1. So you can see how 1 and -5 both work. So we got to get rid of this 3 first by subtracting it. Get rid of the things not attached to it first. And now we can divide by 2 to get rid of this 2. So I have x plus 9 in the absolute value is equal to 2. So we can make it our positive 2 and our negative 2. Subtract 9 from both. So x is equal to negative 7. Subtract 9 again. So x is equal to negative 11. So we got to test these. So go back to the original equation. Remember, you're only going to work the one side. So go in, work the inside of it first. So negative 7 plus 9 should get me 2. Oops. We can take the absolute value, so it's going to keep it that positive. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. So that one worked. I'm going to go ahead and erase this so I can do negative 11. Okay, so I took out the x, I put negative 11 in. Negative 11 plus 9, we got negative 2. The absolute value is going to make it positive, so now it's 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. So you can see how both of them worked again. Okay, extraneous solutions. So we're going to be talking about extraneous solutions. So these are going to be solutions that don't work when you plug it back in. Okay, so if I don't have anything I can move around on this left side here. Gosh. So I'm going to make my one answer positive on the equal side, and the other one negative. So it makes both of those negative, okay? So that's why we did the absolute value. So I'm going to erase that absolute value since I just split it to do it. And we're going to go ahead and solve. So let's subtract 3x. So now I have 2 equals x plus 5, subtract 5. So x equals negative 3. So if we, let's do add 4x in this. So 7x plus 2 equals negative 5, subtract 2. 7x equals negative 7, divide by 7. So x equals negative 1. So I'm going to write them at the top here so we can check our answers. And I'm going to erase all this. So I'm going to take out that x and put negative 1 in. Take out that x and put negative 1 in. So this time you're putting it in twice. So 3 times negative 1, we got negative 3. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. But when we take the absolute value of negative 1, it becomes positive, so that one works. So we're good for negative 1. So now I'm going to erase this, and then I'm going to put negative 3 in this time. So 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. This negative 7, because the absolute value, it is going to become a positive 7. So you can see how this is an extraneous solution because 7 will never equal negative 7. That's why we have to check our answers. So if I rewrite this one, I'm going to have my positive side and I'm also going to have my negative side. So let's go ahead and solve. So we're going to subtract 5x, subtract 14, divide by 2. So I got x is equal to negative 8. So this one, let's add 7x. Add 2, so 12x is equal to negative 12 divided by 12. So I got x is equal to -1 as well. So I'm going to go ahead and erase all this so that we can check both of those. So I went ahead and put -8 in and -1, and I'm going to simplify. So I would pause the video, and I would suggest that you attempt to simplify on your own. I am going to pause and do it very quickly so that we can save some time here. So I'm going to simplify both sides to get our answers, so that you can see the -8 is the extraneous one, because 42 does not equal -42. So this one we're going to make one positive. Oops, I don't need my absolute values if I'm splitting it. And we're going to make the other one negative. Divide by -6, so x is equal to -4. Divide by -6, so x is equal to 4. We check our answers. -6 times -4 is positive 24. My absolute value keeps it positive, so 24 equals 24. -6 times 4. That gets me -24. My absolute value makes it positive, so 24 equals 24. So both of my solutions worked this time. Okay, we got to add 4 first, get rid of the things not attached to it. So now I have 2x plus 8 is equal to 16. So I break it, one with the positive 16, one with the negative 16. Because we're talking about both ends of the 0 here. So subtract 8, divide by 2, subtract 8, divide by 2. Okay, so we got x is equal to 4 and x is equal to -12. So I'm going to plug them in, and then I'm going to show you if they both work. So I would suggest pausing the video and trying it yourself. So make sure you're only simplifying the one side again, don't add the 4 over, and you can see that both of the solutions work again. Here's our last one. So we got to make the right side all positive and also all negative. So I'm going to solve both sides so we can get our two solutions to see, and then check to see if they're extraneous. Okay, so these were the two answers that I got. So check your answers. I am then going to check my answers to see if either of them are extraneous. So I'm going to erase all this and plug them both in. So what I went ahead and did is I converted them all to have the same denominator. So if you look right, that was a bad arrow, there, I converted them all to have the denominator of 5. On the right side I had converted them all to be the denominator of 3 so that I could easily add and subtract my fractions. And you can see that my -10/3 does not work. So it was extraneous.